Good morning, Miss Morales. How has your day been going?
My day has been great. I feel as like my daily language review is really helping my students grasp the skills needed to be successful in revising and editing. Revising and editing are crucial skills required for students to be proficient writers and help them prepare them for the STAR test coming up.
That's great. And y'all do revising and editing every day as a bell ringer, correct?
Yes, we do.
Just to prepare them, that's all. Okay, that's great news to hear. Our campus is blessed to have someone as talented and passionate as yourself teaching. Um, with that being said, I know you pour a lot into our students and you really dig to find new strategies to ensure that your kids are grasping the content. So I just wanted to make sure you're taking care of yourself this school year. So what are you doing to find that work-life balance?
Um, well, I've been I'm trying to make a conscious effort to maintain a healthy work life balance. I set aside time each evening to disconnect from work and practice mindfulness. I have three boys that keep me very busy, and I've also started a weekly book club with my friends, which gives me something enjoyable to look forward to, and it helps my mental health like be refreshed.
That's really good. I love reading. I love that you're a reading
Mm-hmm.
teacher and you're really pulling
Thank
that
you.
in, that our kids see that you enjoy reading. And that you can have those healthy conversations about
Yes.
you reading books and your free time and maybe get them
Yes.
to do that as well. Also, I'm glad that you're taking care of yourself and your boys. They're really lucky to have you as a mom. Reading, like I said, is a relaxing hobby. I'm sure you're tying that in with your own children at home and preparing them to
Mm-hmm.
become better readers. Thank you for all that you do for our students on a daily basis. So to start off, I know at the beginning of the year we've set out and we've created SMART goals with our teams. If you will go ahead and remind me of what your SMART goal is for the year, how it correlates to your lesson, our mission statement, and any progress you have made towards it.
Yes. Okay. So this year, my SMART goal was to increase students' writing proficiency by 15%, as measured by the STAR test and our end of year MAP assessments. So, in this lesson on compound and complex sentences, we are focusing on improving our sentence structure, and that's going to be a key component in the writing proficiency, and it's also tested on the STAR test, so they will see that then.
Great. Um, that's a good goal. What do you see yourself doing to elevate and ensure that you meet this goal by STAR test or by the end of year MAP assessments?
So every day, my students work on a daily language as a bell ringer. So every day they know the expectation, they know the routine. They work on this every day. They need to um, they work on it for 10 minutes as soon as they walk in, and they are seeing sentence structures. They are seeing editing where we use our strategies like cups, and they're also seeing revising sentences where they need to apply different skills and identify which skills to apply to them. As I mentioned previously, I believe that this is preparing my students to become better writers and being able to revise and edit their their own writing as well as practices that we see in passages. Um, this lesson will allow my students to write more compound and complex sentences, which will take them to another level, and it's going to contribute to them writing better overall. This aligns with our um, mission statement that means that we want to ensure that students develop and grow in their academics while following them, allowing them to be creative, critical thinkers.
That's great. And that is like our overall goal is to ensure that
Yes.
we are building critical thinkers. Um, so now jumping into the pre-conference, this is kind of we're going to talk about the domain, the planning domain of the T-test rubric. I know you have your copy. I also have mine here that we will be referring back to. This pre-conference is just really to give me a better understanding of any evidence that I may see? How do you plan your lessons? How do you prepare to ensure students are going to show mastery? That's just going to give me a better idea on if sorry, that's just going to give me a better opportunity for you to demonstrate your knowledge and skills in the planning domain. So I wanted to start off with thank you for providing a copy of your lesson plan for me. I can see the objectives that you will be teaching this Thursday. If you want to follow along, do you have a copy of your
Yes, I do.
objectives? Okay. If you don't mind, could you go ahead and read me the objectives?
Yes, I'll have students are going to identify and construct compound and complex sentences. Do you want me to read you these?
And the language objective as well.
So, our content objective is I will understand the components of compound and complex sentences, and our language objective is I will write a summary using compound and complex sentences. We will start with a review of simple sentences and move into identifying compound sentences with coordinating conjunctions, and then move on to complex sentences with subordinating conjunctions. We'll practice through a mix of direct instruction, group work, and individual exercises.
Sounds great. How does this lesson align with the curriculum standards? And we kind of already talked about the learning objectives, but how does it align with the curriculum standards? And what do you expect your students to learn and at the end master from this lesson?
This lesson aligns with our TEKS and 4.7D that involves the summarizing, retelling, paraphrasing of text. It's going to align with our 4.11b to help students develop drafts into a focused, structured, and coherent piece of writing. We're going to throw in 4.11di, which is going to entail the complete, simple, and our compound sentences. 4.11d8 to use coordinate conjunctions to form those compound subjects, predicates, and 4.1110 to that's going to cover all of our punctuation with that.
Okay, are you covering, I know you have a language objective and I know you have some ELL students. One thing I didn't notice in your lesson plan, and I know you do it, and just ensure that you're including those ELPs and that your students are practicing that for our end of year, or not end of year, but for the TELPAS test as well. So with that being said, what background knowledge do students need to be successful in these standards to show mastery of the content objective?
Okay, so students will need to tie in their learning to identifying those simple sentences by independent clauses, and then they need to have a good grasp on what a subject and a predicate is. Students will also need to use prior knowledge like fanboys, RO woobies, and being able to create sentences with either independent clauses or their dependent clauses.
Okay, and I love that y'all use the acronym fanboy and awoobies, but I would also like to just ensure that you're showing your students the actual term of
Yes.
these. That way, when they see it on the STAR test, they're not surprised by that and they know to use the fanboys.
Yes.
So, what will students be able to show you to show mastery of the learning objective and being able to understand the components of compound and complex sentences?
Students are going to be able to write a story, including both types of sentences. In their writing, they're going to use compound sentences as well as complex sentences. Students will be assessed using a rubric that I have brought with you to show you. Students will also be evaluating to show mastery through the guided practice, where students are creating their own sentences and labeling them with their group. Our quick checks for checking for understanding, and for our summative assessment through a writing assessment using also a rubric.
Thank you. I didn't notice the rubric in your lesson plan, so I'm glad that you brought it today and gives me a better idea of how you're going to assess your students at the end of the lesson. How do you check for understanding? Usually just a quick check.
It's either just a show of hands or a quick thumbs up, quick thumbs down. Sometimes it's flashcards, a quick exit ticket. It could be online exit tickets that we've done in the past. A quick walk around the room and seeing who's got it, who's not, who's on the right track as well.
Okay, how have you considered the diverse needs of your students in planning this lesson?
I have several ELL students or EB students who struggle with our sentence structure. So I'll include visual aids and sentence starters. For my more advanced students, I'm going to provide more challenging writing prompts and that require them to use more than one compound sentence or complex sentence.
And how do you determine when, how, and why you need to pull for small groups? I know you said you do quick check for understanding, sometimes just circling the room. I don't know if that ties in with how you are pulling your small groups. If you could just kind of elaborate more on that.
When determining or when and or how to pull students for small group instruction, I rely on continuous formative assessments and observational data. So I'm circulating around the room and doing those activities, I'm paying very close attention to those students' engagement and their performance. Specifically, I look for signs of struggle or confusion, if they're not completing the work, or if they're making the same mistake over and over again. For example, during a lesson on compound and complex sentences, I might notice some students having difficulty combining those sentences correctly. So this real-time observation helps me to identify those who need that additional support. I also like to have a checklist, and I mark off students that may need additional support to add to my intervention group for that next 6-week period, which will be our WIN groups.
So your checklist and pulling those students for your next WIN group in the next 6 weeks, that's great. Do you go back to this lesson and reteach it with those students if those are the students you're pulling?
I like to pinpoint where the struggle is. If it's just compound sentences, sometimes they understand the compound but they don't understand the complex. So I try to identify where the target area is, or the confusion, misunderstanding is. Is it the fanboys or the awoobies? Is it what makes a complete sentence versus the independent and dependent clauses? And then I try to structure it that way and see if I have to go back to the basics of one complete sentence, or maybe it's just the complex sentence, which is confusing them. So,
and I think those are some challenges that you anticipate to arise maybe in this lesson
yes,
that you're looking for.
Yes, I do.
With those students, right, to check off. So thank you for sharing your detailed lesson plan and insights. It's clear you've put a lot of thought into meeting your students' needs. I just wanted to let you know I look forward to observing your lesson and seeing your strategies in action. Is there anything else you'd like to discuss, and what is an area of refinement that you think you may need to continue to grow in?
Thank you. I feel prepared, but if you could look at providing me with evidence on my differentiation for my ELL students, that would be very helpful. This is an area that I like to grow in. I would like to grow in, and ensure in helping my students pass that TEL Pass test.
Great. One more thing before we leave, I just kind of wanted to show you the T-test rubric. I know you're probably going to go back and look at it, but I just wanted to let you know proficient is, if you fall into the proficient category, you are a rock solid teacher. You are great, but you are one of our really good teachers, and you really do collaborate and work well with our other staff, and you're growing our students. So I think we can get a lot of your descriptors from proficient to fall into accomplished. If you just want to look at the descriptors in your lesson that I will be observing, I will be looking at domain 2, which is achieving expectations, content, knowledge, and expertise, communication, differentiation, and then monitor and adjust, And then I will also be going into dimension 3. During your observation, I will be looking for evidence to pull for classroom environment routines and procedures, managing student behavior, classroom culture, professional demeanor, sorry, and that was the last one, classroom culture. So I just really suggest you look at those and look at the descriptors from proficient to accomplished, because I would like to see you grow in some areas. If you have no other questions, I will see you on Thursday to observe you. Okay, then we are going into I've observed her. It is now the post conference. So you came in, it's the post conference. Good afternoon, Miss Morales. How are you today?
Good afternoon, Mrs. Campos. I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm well, thank you for asking. How do you feel like your lesson went?
Overall, I think the lesson went very well. The students were engaged and they seemed to understand the material. However, I did notice a few students that were struggling.
Okay, what is something you could improve on? I know your area of refinement from our pre-conference was differentiation. Do you still believe that that is an area you could improve on?
I think I could improve on providing clear instructions for the summary writing activity. Some students seemed to confused about what was expected of them.
Okay, yes, I could see that, and just tying in maybe more modeling of the summarizing. I know y'all probably taught that lesson throughout the week, and it's something that they have not seen before, but just make sure you always model a learning target for the students and what is expected of them. Can you explain your classroom management to me?
As for classroom management, I like to focus on creating a positive classroom culture where students feel respected and encouraged to participate. I use a mix of group work and individual tasks to keep students engaged. And I have clear rules and procedures in place to minimize any disruptions that may occur.
Your area of reinforcement that really stuck out to me was dimension 3.3. We're going to go ahead and look at that. So on dimension 3.3, which is classroom cultures, your students seem to have respected one another and were very eager in the lesson. So the proficient descriptors, you're engaging all students in a relevant, meaningful learning, and students are working respectfully, individually, and in groups. On the accomplished side, students are now collaborating positively with each other and the teacher. So I really saw a lot of the collaboration between each other. They were very positive about the whole learning and creating sentences, and really kind of jumping off of each other's ideas to grow those sentences. How are your activities or small groups structured so that students are expected to collaborate positively with one another?
Okay, so I structure my activities to promote collaboration by assigning roles with each group, and setting clear expectations for how they should interact. For example, the sentence building activity, each student had a task, whether it was choosing words or writing those sentences or helping with the labeling. This helps ensure that everyone is contributing and learning from each other.
Okay, I've actually provided some evidence where I've time-stamped that during the guided practice piece of your lesson, you had students working together with their small groups. You had 4 groups with 3 to 4 students per group, totaling 15 students in your class. At one group, students were working in creating different sentence structures, compound and complex, by piecing together words and writing them on sentence strips. You had students elaborating on the ideas of their partners and encouraging each other to label each part of the sentence. When it was time for students to switch, you had another group come to this station, and one student knew to go grab a game called Silly Sentences that were just words that had been color coded to show the different parts of speech, such as nouns, verbs, adjectives, and those kinds of parts of speech. This game really seemed to help those students on building their sentences and allowed you the opportunity to continue working with your small group. I just wanted to say that this was a great way of adjusting the lesson based on students' abilities. I rated you as accomplished in this domain and dimension just because those students really collaborated well together and they really took an initiative of adjusting the lesson for their needs on their own.
Yes.
So, great job there. Looking at the descriptors, would you agree?
Yes, I agree with your assessment. I'm glad that the adjustments that I made were being effective and that the students were able to be engaged in the material in all those different ways.
Great. Going back to your pre-conference, you asked if I could look at providing you with evidence on differentiating for your ELL students. This is an area you would like to grow in and ensure in helping your students pass the TELPAS. I think you do a great job in differentiating lessons already by having students be responsible. For instance, referring back to the students who went and pulled out the silly sentence game. I noticed some of your ELL students were a part of that group, and this is helping them to build on their vocabulary with little to no assistance from you, the teacher, or even from their peers. You also have students writing their summary using the four quadrants practice that you learned at a workshop that you attended. Um, at the end of your lesson, I enjoyed seeing students adding content vocabulary from each subject into their writing. This is great practice for all students to see those real world connections and pulling from math, science to their life and across the curriculum. How was the training you attended?
Very informative, and I liked it very much. The TELPAS training gave me a lot of practical strategies to use in the classroom. I found the four quadrant writing technique particularly very helpful because it was great to see that it was making a positive impact on my students' learning.
That's great. I mean, your students went with it. They seem to do very well, even your ELL students. So I would like for you and the other teachers to be able to present a mini PD to our campus. Is this something that you think you would be interested in doing so we can get this going across our campus and aligned?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to share what I've learned with my colleagues and help them implement these strategies into their own classrooms.
Great. Overall, you're always such a big help to our campus, and a participant in all faculty and team meetings. You've led professional development opportunities in the past. You've served as a mentor for some of our new teachers. You're always willing to share your expertise and find new ways to engage our students. So thank you once again for all that you do to grow our campus. Back to the area of refinement, I know you really wanted to focus on differentiation, but an area of refinement that you could grow in would be dimension 2.1, which is achieving expectations. I'm going to just give you a few minutes to look at the descriptors on proficient.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What are some keywords that stick out to you?
Academic expectations, all students, or most, taking initiative, following through.
Okay. So while students were for the most part able to be successful in forming compound and complex sentences, they still struggled to be successful at writing a summary of the story they had read earlier in the week. After students completed the whole group lesson and you modeled the differences between both sentence types, your students then were moved into guided practice, working cooperatively with their groups. The student stations were forming compound and complex sentences, you had the journal writing with the four quadrants, and you even provided a rubric. You also had a read and AR station, and then you had a teacher group where you were pulling you were pulling a small group of students to work with. Mm-hmm. As I walked around the room, students struggled to be able to write a complete summary with all elements needed in the story, along with providing content vocabulary words. and forming more complex sentences. How do you anticipate student mistakes and misunderstandings? What do you believe was the common learning pitfall in this part of the lesson? Can students generally write a summary, or is this something that they tend to struggle with, or do you just think maybe there was too much going on for some of your ELL students, especially?
I think the initial summary itself was the confusing part. I think I needed to go back and reinforce what a summary entails and what is required to write a summary um, before we focused on adding the compound and complex sentences into the writing. Um, we should have focused or revisited that part of the lesson as well. Before, I think that's where my ELL students probably got more confused because it wasn't just writing sentences anymore; it was writing specific sentences in an order reflecting the summary of a story.
So, could more teacher modeling, this is what I'm getting from you, and just correct me if I'm wrong, but could more teacher modeling before setting students free in working in their station work um, be provided for the students, is what you're saying, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Another recommendation would be just to set your groups by differentiating levels. This way, you could have a group leader who could help you in addressing those student mistakes when you are working with your small group. Um, so maybe having like a higher student with some of your ELO students mixed with like your middle students, your like master's approaches and does not approach. Just think of it that way. I love the one group that was able to take initiative of their own learning by going for the silly sentence game. Your higher group of students who may finish their work early, because you did also have some of those who did go back to the table and ask you, what do we do now? Maybe you could provide them with a choice board to continue to demonstrate mastery by providing them with extra activities to help them grow in the objective.
Yes.
How do you feel about this being an area of refinement for you?
I think it's a fair assessment. I can see that more modeling and differentiating the groups would help address some of those challenges that the students faced. And I'll definitely work on incorporating these strategies to improve the understanding to get them to perform at the mastery level.
Overall, like I've said, you are a wonderful asset to our campus, and you are very knowledgeable and about a variety of teaching techniques, and it's evident that you continue to reflect on and research techniques that can be implemented to allow your students to be more successful. I just wanted to say thank you once again. I would also be sure that whatever tasks are being asked during station work or an exit ticket are those that are also modeled or taught through the course of the lesson. And I think we've both came to an understanding just that the main area was the summarizing where the students were a little bit confused. I know that students have previously learned about the summary. However, it would have been good for them to have another opportunity to have these thinking skills modeled with them before being asked to complete these tasks during a station. So I know we covered the area of reinforcement and the area of refinement, but I do have your T-tests rubric with all of the dimensions and how I've rated you. If you want, I'm going to go ahead and just let you look through it. I've given you evidence, and then whenever you are ready, if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. And if you will just sign and date it, and then I will also get you a copy.
That's fine.
Okay, and I know as a campus, our whole goal is to grow together. Our students are growing, we should continue to grow. So I'm going to be sending out a anonymous survey. My mind went blank. An anonymous survey, and I'm just asking for teachers to provide feedback on ways that I can grow as your leader. Um, so just before the end of the year, if you don't mind filling that out. Other than that, if you have no questions,
I'm good.
okay. Thank you, Miss Morales, for all that you do.
You're welcome.